Welcome, Minties, to the fourth and final part of the Batman Comprehensive Reading Order in Collected Editions. Let's do this thing. So here we finally are, the grand finale. All of the Batman and Detective Comics in comprehensive reading order. Again, I'm mainly focusing on those titles. Of course, I'll be talking about Batman and Robin this time around, and where Batman Eternal and maybe Batman and Robin Eternal fit in. But for the most part, this is and has been the Batman and Detective Comics reading order. Before I even get started, a huge thank you to our patrons for voting for this. Every month we put out a poll as to what the next reading order should be, and you can vote in that poll by joining our Patreon. All of that information is in the description down below. There are many tiers to our Patreon levels, such as early access to videos, just like this one. And the written document of this reading order can also be found on our Patreon. So, without further ado, let's go ahead. Today we are focusing everything from New 52 all the way to present day. Look at all these books. Isn't this nice to look at? We actually have books with sequential numbers on them, 1 through 10. Oh man, if only the rest of DC was collected this way. But it's not that easy, right? I'm going to be telling you when I think the best place is to read these books. New 52. It all begins here. By the way, I've seen New 52 spelled NU 52 for New Universe and New 52. So you might have seen it both ways, but that's what this is. We now have a new status quo for Batman, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But we are kicking it off with Detective Comics Volume 1, Faces of Death. And if you're looking at the content of this down below, you see that this collects Detective Comics 1 through 7. And you're probably wondering, wait a minute, what the hell? Wasn't Detective Comics all the way up to almost 900? Yes. However, DC decided with the New 52 to restart everything, including the numbering system for every single title, like Action Comics and Detective Comics, two of the longest running comic books here in America. So with this, we have now Antonio S. Daniel taking over as writer and artist of Detective Comics, introducing us to the New 52 status quo for Batman. There is a brief little first issue with the Joker, and it's the reason why I think this is the first book you should read from the New 52. And then it takes us all the way up until when we're introduced to the new doll maker. So let's keep going. Now, the next book you should read can be read in this omnibus, or you can get the trade paperbacks or standard hardcovers, which is the way that I owned them until I got the omnibus. Now, we only have one omnibus of the Scott Snyder run as of this video. Now, Scott Snyder, the guy that did the Black Mirror, like I mentioned, one of the best Batman stories, even though it wasn't Bruce Wayne, it was Dick Grayson. Now he is writing Bruce Wayne as Batman in this new universe. And joining him for this amazing run is an artist that has worked at Marvel and worked at DC, of course, Image, and that is Greg Capullo. Greg Capullo was an artist that did Quasar at Marvel. He went on to Image to do Spawn, and they kick it off with a storyline called The Court of the Owls. Oh, it's so awesome. Way to kick it off and set the bar high. This is one of the best Batman comics, in my opinion. Now, the new status quo that I was talking about for Batman doesn't really affect Batman that much, with the exception of two of his members of his Bat family, one of them being Barbara Gordon. And spoilers, again, just in case you don't want to hear any more about this, or how they are affected because of the new universe after Flashpoint. Okay, so Barbara Gordon, who used to go as Oracle, who was shot by the Joker and paralyzed from the waist down, she was retconned and now is back in the role of Batgirl. So the original Batgirl is back being Batgirl, de-aged a little bit. The second thing that they retconned was the de-aging of Commissioner Gordon. Commissioner Gordon was no longer married or had an affair. He was never married to Sarah. And he's a lot younger. And then the third and most confusing thing that they retconned is Tim Drake. He was not a Robin, he was a Robin, then he wasn't a Robin, because during this time Damian Wayne is Robin, and Tim Drake was going as Red Robin. So that was the confusing thing that editors and writers could not get together at DC. Is Tim Drake a real Robin? Was he really the third Robin, or did we go from Jason Todd to Damian Wayne? Well, I think now, as of this video and of recent issues of Young Justice, where he was going as Drake. Thanks, Bendis. He is now back to being Robin again. So he was a Robin. I completely suggest reading this omnibus or those trade paperbacks all the way up to issue 17. And there's a reason for that. Let's go back and look at other books. We'll come back to this. So here we have Batman Detective Comics Volume 2, Scare Tactics. And who features in here? Well, none other than the Scarecrow, of course, in the New 52 universe, and Catwoman. Again, it is Tony S. Daniel writing and drawing most of this stuff. So, of course, you saw Scarecrow. So it begins with Batman tracking down the Scarecrow, and, of course, he's got to stop him before any of his hostages get hurt. It's your stereotypical Batman story. And then we get a couple of issues where he has to make a deal with Dr. Arkham. And this is all part of the Court of Owls storyline. That's why I think it's important to read here. Volume 3 of Detective Comics. This takes us all the way up to issue 18, and I think this is where a good stopping point is. And again, I'll warn you all ahead of time as to why I am telling you all to stop this. And if you don't want to hear spoilers, you just move on ahead past that part. But this is now John Layman takes over writing duties. And then most of this collection centers around the two penguins. You have Oswald Cobblepot, which of course is the original penguin. And then Ignatius Ogilvy, who is Emperor Penguin. And that's pretty much what this is. Ignatius Ogilvy. Oh man, I hope I'm pronouncing that guy's name right. By the way, you may recognize this art from the recently released Three Jokers. And that is Jason Fabok, who ended up taking over Justice League for a while. He's a freaking awesome artist, and you can see some of his earlier stuff within these pages. After you read that third volume in the first 17 issues of Batman in the omnibus format, you come back to this book right here. And this is Batman and Robin. And there was one other book I forgot about, and I forgot about it because for some reason I've missed it. Now, I have definitely made up for that because I placed an order. But that was Batman and Robin, The Dark Knight versus White Knight. I thought that book just collected the Peter Tomasi stuff. Apparently that book also collects the Paul Cornell's run that finishes out the original volume of Batman and Robin before they start over again with the New 52. Now, this is Batman and Robin. Damian Wayne is Robin, and Bruce Wayne, his father, is Batman. And I suggest reading this all the way up until issue 17. Issue 17 everywhere seems to be a big point. And that's basically after the Joker storyline, the death in the family. Remember this book that we started in part 3? Well, now it is very important to read it here. We've read the first 8 issues, which kicked off the series, but now we need to read the New 52 issues, which is the second volume here. Now, something really important happens in this omnibus, or in the trade paperback collections, however you own them. So, if you don't want to know about it, why I said to stop reading all those books, just skip ahead. But just in case, spoilers. Okay, let's move on forward. In issue 8 of this series, this one here, Damian Wayne dies. And it's a brutal death. It's Grant Morrison killing off the character that he created, and there's no hiding it. It is pretty damn brutal if you look at it. I'm not going to show you exactly how it happens, but he dies. Now you can finish out this particular omnibus, and we'll go back and talk about another one. But I suggest going ahead and finishing out Grant Morrison's Batman Incorporated run in this omnibus. And now that takes us to Detective Comics Volume 4, The Wrath. And this book is about the Wraith, who is a serial killer who's been around before. He was in the Batman Confidential comics. He's been around in the past, of course. But since I'm mainly focusing on Detective Comics and Batman, this is his first appearance in the new universe, in the New 52 universe. And so in this universe, Wraith is a serial killer who targets cops. And it's pretty cool because he's also like the anti-Batman because he uses little gadgets. He's got money because it's an array of expensive and tactical equipment that he uses to take down his foes. So very much like Batman, except he's, not good. So that's where you should come next. Next up is the New 52's Villains Omnibus. And the reason I'm including this in here is because there are issues of Batman in here that are not collected in the Omnibus or in the trade paperbacks. There are issues of Detective Comics in here, of Batman and Robin, of Batman Dark Knight, and these focus on their villains. And I think it's important to read this if you're a fan of the villains or you want to get to know more about these villains that appear during the New 52 era. Of course, it's not just Batman. It's also got, Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, stories like that. But I strongly suggest reading, the Batman stuff in here. It's got a cool lenticular cover, too, this omnibus does. And now you want to come back to the Batman omnibus by Scott Snyder. So, as I mentioned, that death of a character affected Batman throughout all his books, and I'll talk about one particular issue here in Batman and Robin. And all of that takes place, like I said, after the death in the family and what begins in 0 Year. But really, these two titles, Batman and Detective Comics, kind of became their own entities. Like, you could read one without reading the other, even in the crossover events with Death in the Family. I'm serious, because Batman was doing his own thing, Detective Comics was doing its own thing. There is something that happens towards the end of this run, I guess the second arc of Scott Snyder's run. Now we have Gothtopia. So the interesting thing about this collection here, other than, again, Jason Fabok and John Layman writing it, is the collected version of Detective Comics 27, which was, of course, celebrating the first appearance of Batman. It's a huge issue. Now, not the entire thing is collected in here because it was such a huge issue. Some of it are collected in the Batman Omnibus, some of it are collected in the Batman and Robin Omnibus, but here's just a small taste of that stuff. You have Neil Adams returning here for some artwork. Now, there is no omnibus of this edition. It's mainly... Here, let's skip a little more through here because this is all 27 with Sean Murphy now. This is all mainly collected in standard size hardcovers or in trade paperback editions. Here we have Detective Comics Volume 6, Icarus. And now the team that did the Flash New 52 stories are taking over Detective Comics, and that is Francis Manapul and Steve Buscelato. So you can tell the artwork is all Francis Manapul. Francis Manapul was an artist that started off on... he was on Witchblade, and then he did issues of Legion of Superheroes. But I think Flash is the comic that kind of put his name on the map. He's a phenomenal artist, and he's also a pretty damn good storyteller. So this particular story focuses on Batman as he's trying to eliminate the street drug. And then there is a potential business partner of Bruce Wayne's that could have some kind of involvement. Now, what's really cool, especially about this volume, this is why I'm surprised there was never an omnibus of this, is that the stories in here make you flip back and forth to make sure that you are getting the complete story. And I think that is really cool. That says something about being a good storyteller, right? It helps that you're also the artist when you're the writer. The reason I kept this book here is because Graveyard Shift collects issue 34 of Batman, and I need that second omnibus, and it hasn't been announced yet. This particular collection, also available, like I mentioned, in trade paperback, is a hodgepodge of collections that were just kind of left over. So, like I mentioned, the main reason I'm keeping it is because of issue 34. There's no other reason, because all this stuff is collected in the omnibus. It's Batman Eternal. I'm even throwing this sucker in here, because a lot of people have asked me where it fits in. This happens after issue 28 of the Scott Snyder run. So if you want to read the Scott Snyder Batman Omnibus, go for it. This is co-written by him and the amazing James Tynion, who eventually will have his own Batman book, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. But this is a weekly series that happened during this run. You can read this all the way to the end, and I'll tell you when to read Batman and Robin Eternal. And speaking of Omnibus, as of this video, there is no Batman Scott Snyder Omnibus Volume 2. So we're going back to trade paperback or hardcover, standard size hardcover, and this is Batman Volume 7 Endgame. Things have all been leading up to this very moment. It all kicks off with Batman versus the Justice League, and then, of course, this guy right here, the Joker, is back in town. And This is arguably the climax and pinnacle of Snyder's run. I think a lot of people would agree to that about as far as his New 52 run, because he did write stories past this. As a matter of fact, we're going to be talking about them here in a second. All right, Superheavy. I have to talk about a little bit of a spoiler, so just in case, spoilers. I don't want to ruin this for anybody, but just in case, I do want to talk about something that happened in the previous volume, Endgame. So, following the disappearance and then the presumed death of Bruce Wayne, our Batman, somebody needs to step in and fill in his shoes. Somebody has to carry on the Dark Knight legacy. And that is this right here, this guy right here. This is the Dark Knight successor. And I'm not going to reveal who it is, just because I know I hate to spoil anything for anybody, but this is the new Batman who is taking over Gotham. And it's not Bruce Wayne. Volume 9, Bloom. Again, spoilers just in case. So, Bruce Wayne is not dead. He's not. And he plans to return to Gotham to once again wear the cowl of Batman. And Mr. Bloom is the new villain that's introduced. Well, he was introduced a little bit earlier, but he's the new villain that's introduced, and he kind of makes a pretty fearful bad guy. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't finish out this run, because if you see this goes all the way to 50, but it doesn't collect issues 51 and 52. I'll look at the final book here in a second. There are some characters that are introduced here towards the tail end of his run that play an important part in the Rebirth era. So my suggestion is to just go ahead and finish out Batman by Snyder. And that all ends here with Epilogue. This is where issues 51 and 52 are. This also contains, of course, Future's End, number 1, which is just a one-shot, the 4th annual, and then some of the material, not even all of it, from Batman Rebirth issue 1, which he helped co-write. But this is what finishes out the New 52 Batman. After this, let's talk about something else first. And at this moment, I just want to remind everybody to please smash that like button if you enjoy what you're seeing. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We put out videos every day. And more importantly, check out our Patreon. It's a great way to support the channel if you can do so. Let's go back to this, because there's something important I haven't talked about yet. So, just again, spoilers when I was talking about the Batman by Grant Morrison Volume 3. So, just in case, spoilers. So, after Batman loses Robin, after he loses Damian Wayne, there is a silent issue here, man, that he is just mourning the death of his son. And then, again, spoilers, there's a mini-series, I have to talk about this, that's called The Return of Damian. And that is where Robin comes back. It's done by Andy Kubert. I didn't include it in this because I'm mainly talking about Detective and Batman comics, but I feel like it's important to mention in case you're like, wait a minute, this dude just died. How the hell is he back? Well, that's the book that you need to read in case you're wondering how Damian returns as the role of Robin, because this book continues. I mean, it's a beautiful omnibus. If I'm going to suggest one of these books, I'm definitely going to suggest Batman and Robin. It is freaking awesome. But you might be lost when I talked a little bit about, what happens in the Morrison omnibus. But check this one out for sure. Now, so let's focus on Anarky. This is Volume 7 of Francis Manapul and Stephen Busolato's Detective Comics run. Anarky was one of these characters that appeared pre-Crisis, right? And he's long thought dead because of events that happened. And now he is back, and it's a new retelling of his origin. So this is the first time I actually got to read Benjamin Percy's work. He's the guy that went on to do Green Arrow. He's taken over Wolverine. He's done X-Force for Marvel. So we have this killer that's calling himself Anarky. And he wipes the identity of every resident in Gotham clean, giving them a chance to remake themselves into whatever image they see fit. Now, is that Anarky to you? Maybe. I don't know. It is the Batman. Volume 8, Blood Heroes. This is a pretty unique storyline, the very first one here, because it stars Harvey Bullock, right? Because I said there was a new Batman. So the focus shifts over to his character because there's a new Batman in Gotham. Now, this is also where Peter Tomasi takes over this book for a little while. And he is joined by Fernando Blanco on artwork and Stephen Pugh, who I really enjoy his art. Now let's move on to the final volume of Detective Comics. Volume 9, Gordon at War. Why is he at war? Who is he at war with? Well, one way to find out. So, as I mentioned, because of Volume 9 and 10 of Batman, we have Bruce Wayne wanting to come back and take over the role of Batman. And then he's discovering, of course, it's not as easy as it once was to be Batman. It's not as easy to come back and be Batman. And this is where I'm suggesting to read Batman and Robin Eternal. This is a series, again, by James Tynion, who is now the head writer on this, co-written by Scott Snyder. And this sets up a lot of the Bat family that will be a big role in Batman Rebirth, mainly the Detective Comics run. So that's why I suggest reading it here. I know I said I wasn't going to throw a limited series in here, but I think this one here is really important. So where Batman Eternal was 52 issues, this one here is only 26 issues, only collected in trade paperback format. DC Universe Rebirth. It can't be Batman without another crisis, right? So this again reboots the universe of the DC Comics, mainly affecting the characters of Superman, Wonder Woman, and Flash. However, I strongly suggest reading it because there are some changes made to Bruce Wayne Batman. And I'm not going to reveal any spoilers, but this also leads into a crossover event later on. But yes, Rebirth. Now, you can follow the little numbers here at the bottom because I do think that they're separated enough that each one is enjoyable, Detective Comics and Batman, by itself. But I think I'm going to suggest reading Batman Rebirth Deluxe Edition Volume 1 first. Now, if you own the Deluxe Edition or the trade paperback, there's also a crossover with Nightwing and Detective Comics, and that is called Night of the Monster Men. That is, only the parts with Batman are collected in here. So Nightwing, you'll need to get the Nightwing trade paperbacks or the Deluxe Edition, and the same thing with Detective Comics. But since I'm going to be talking about Detective Comics, I'll show you where. And that's mainly issues 7 and 8 of Batman, and then 941 and 942 of Detective Comics. So keep that in mind. This kicks off with Tom King and Scott Snyder's run. It's got beautiful artwork by David Finch and Michael Janin. And then Scott Snyder just writes the very first issue, the Rebirth issue, and then it becomes Tom King's thing. Because the next book I'm going to be talking about is one that is one of my favorite books. And when I do these reading orders, it's very difficult to hold back when I'm talking about a certain book and the excitement that I get over it. This is Detective Comics. This is the Rebirth Deluxe Edition Volume 1. Now James Tynion has taken over the book. This is his title. And the main artist on this book is Eddie Barrows. Now, this focuses more on the Bat family. This is mainly the story of Batman, but it focuses on Tim Drake Robin, Stephanie Brown, Batwoman, Cassandra Cain, who is now going as Orphan. There's other characters in here that I don't want to spoil. Well, other characters other than the ones on the cover. So yes, even Clayface joins the team. But this is the heart and soul, I think, of the Batman universe in DC Rebirth. So I say keep on trucking. Keep on reading this stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, with Volume 1, you're going to need to read Batman, the Deluxe Edition Volume 1, as well as the Nightwing Deluxe Edition Volume 1. So let's keep on trucking. I say keep going with the deluxe editions of this Detective Comics, because to me, this is wonderful. This particular volume has the return of Lady Shiva, one of my favorite Bat characters that has been around for ages. I didn't really get to talk about her. Doing these reading orders sometimes can be difficult because there are things I want to talk about and I end up cutting it because I just go on way too damn long. But yes, now we are in the League of Shadows. They make a return, and then Cassandra Cain plays a big role. Like I said, she's going as Orphan. I forgot Azrael's in this too. See why this book is so awesome? After reading this volume is where you can start DC Metal. I know I've been getting a lot of questions about when to read that, but it takes place after, or at least I strongly suggest reading it after DC Rebirth, Volume 2 of either Batman Detective or Batman Deluxe Editions. The other thing I was going to say, if you've noticed down below when I'm putting the content in, is that Detective Comics has gone back to its original numbering system. So no longer are the days of the New 52, 1 through 52. We've gone back to the original numbering system, as well as Action Comics over in Superman books. And here we have book 3. So let's keep on going with this. This one this one will tear your heart out. This is the one that has a really good story about Clayface in here. And he was once, Batman's arch nemesis. Now he's become one of his most powerful allies. So this is the showdown between Anarky, who showed up in the New 52. It's that Anarky. And he is just wanting to create a new utopia. So, of course, the Bat family is not going to let him do that. So, this storyline, these books, let's look at the 4th one. This is the 4th and last one. So, these stories right here that you're seeing in deluxe format have been announced for an upcoming Omnibus in 2021. But as of this video, they're just available in trade paperback and in deluxe edition. So, this one focuses heavily on Tim Drake. And, of course, the rest of the Batman proteges. This is the final arc of James Tynion before he takes off and becomes the head writer of Batman. And who takes over Detective Comics? Well, none other than the team of Peter Tomasi and Doug Mahnke. So far, only available in trade paperback. There is no deluxe edition of these. As of this video, there's no announcement of them, so I don't know if there's going to be or not. This is the same team that was doing Superman. Did a phenomenal job on that. Have been working together since the, the Black Adam Dark Ages book, and then they moved on to Green Lantern Corps. So they have been working together for a long time. So it's good to see them working on a Batman book. Here's Deluxe Edition Volume 2, collecting one of my favorite storylines that Tom King did, and that is I Am Bane. It seems to me that that's the story that kind of made me think, okay, this guy, he's a pretty damn good writer. Because I wasn't a big fan of the first deluxe edition, I'll be honest. But this storyline right here was pretty damn badass. By the way, there is a crossover with The Flash on here. It's issues 21 and 22 of Batman. But the Flash issues, the Flash 21 and 22... The crossover, by the way, is called The Button, and much like Monster Man is available in a hardcover edition. Or you can just get the Flash Deluxe Edition. It's a 4-part crossover event called The Button. Here is Volume 3, and we have Joel Jones. Yeah, that outfit looks familiar if you've watched the Snyder Justice League movie. You have Joel Jones, Lee Weeks joining in on this, Clay Mann drawing a lot of... Man, Joel Jones has become, recently has become one of my favorite artists. Ever since I read Lady Killer. Oh, she is wonderful. Then, of course, Michael Janin. By now, the relationship of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, Catwoman, is growing and growing. So much so that there are a lot of things that happen here that, man, look at that. That pissed off some fans. At least the outcome of it did. Let's move on and talk about the next volume. So here we have Volume 4. Now, one of the things I will say about Volume 4 is the quality of the paper stock in the deluxe editions have changed. It's no longer the glossy style paper, but it is this thick matte paper that is in the deluxe editions. I know some people were upset about that. This is, I think, the halfway point of Tom King's book. I think he was supposed to go all the way to 100. However, he is off the book, and he's supposed to be working on Batman and Catwoman, a series. So I don't know when that kicks off. And as you notice, as I'm flipping through here, the art is done by Tony S. Daniel. So that's who is joining, for the most part, Tom King on this particular volume. So here is Batman Deluxe Edition Volume 5. We don't know if there's going to be a Volume 6 or not. This particular volume collects one of the most infamous arcs, and that is the Nightmare arc. There's also a crossover with The Flash. That's the Flash issues are not collected in here, and that is issues of Flash 64 and 65. So 64 and 65 of Batman are in here, but not of The Flash. I think when we got the original solicits, they were not included in here, those Batman issues, but rest assured, they are included in this book. And I don't have the James Tynion Batman book yet, because I don't think it's out yet as of this video. Now, you can purchase most of these books from our sponsor,
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off the cover price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. And check out their bargain bin for even greater deals up to 90% off cover price. And for you minties, Cheap Graphic Novels is running a special promotion. If you're a first-time customer, let them know you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discounts, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And that was the Batman Comprehensive Reading Order. That's it. This one kicked my ass. So it was a lot of fun going back and rereading a lot of this stuff. And I hope I was able to guide most of you all in the right direction as to when to read these and where they are collected. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button, ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We can be found on Redbubble and on Patreon. Great ways to support the channel if you can do so. More importantly, please everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and much love to all of you.